So, hello to everyone. We are very pleased to welcome you to our workshop, To Walk the Talk. We will today speak on very concrete tools. I will just suggest to wait a few minutes until all the panelists are present. Welcome also to the people online. It's a great pleasure to see that we will probably work in the workshops quite intensively because we are a few, but probably a high quality attendance. My name is Olivier Cher. I will start with that. I have a background in ecology, engineering, and then management, working with different level of stakeholders from the community or communal level until the global level with private sector stakeholders as well as authorities or administrations. Today also I welcome the support of Gérard Boss, which will introduce, who will introduce himself later, and then also Fanny Boncourt, who is a business partner around corporate biodiversity. In a few words, what does mean? What is corporate biodiversity? It's just a way to mainstream biodiversity in the operations, but also in the strategy, in all the activities of a company. Now, we are in the position to set up, I would say, robust or sound strategies on biodiversity, but also report on the progress about your targets, and also have the possibility to monitor the impact, whatever they are, of your activities on biodiversity. Why would you ask biodiversity? Because we all need nature, and biodiversity is a very good indicator of the health of the nature. There is now a common agreement on the fact that nature is integrates biodiversity, water, climate, and soil. But let's just keep in the mind that biodiversity is the only indicator on which we could, or we must focus if we have just to choose or select one indicator through nature. They asked me to be punctual, but I'm coming from the canton de Vaud, so there we are used to have a quarter of an hour of late. So on which part of the French speaker part of Switzerland do I have to start? What do you want? Well, we will start. Okay. On the agenda, there will be three parts. A first, through which I will go, I will in fact present the basics of biodiversity in the portfolio, in the finance. Then an interactive part in which you will have to work yourself together or in two groups, we will see. And the third, in which I will ask and also be very pleased to welcome Gérard and Fanny to interact with you. So the third part is absolutely interactive. We have no plan, so feel free to come with any kind of question that you have, any kind of comment, positive or negative, it doesn't matter. So let's just start with biodiversity. It's just the diversity of life on the earth, the variety. It covers two types, the double materiality, we used to say, the impacts and the dependencies. Today, with the presentation on some of the approaches around corporate biodiversity footprint, we will focus on the impact. And that said, some of the tools that I will present can also assess the dependencies of your investments on biodiversity. These are the dependencies just to show that any kind of human activities or business activities rely on biodiversity or on nature on the earth. Here is a short presentation or summarize of the ecosystem services that we are, with which you are probably absolutely familiar. I would say since 2020, some very important financial institutions are started to assess their impacts on biodiversity and also their dependencies. What did they find? What did they find? For example, about the Netherlands National Bank, they found that 36% of their portfolio were highly exposed to biodiversity loss or the biodiversity services. And when we integrate or when we look also at the high dependent of this investment on biodiversity services, the figure is more about 50% than 36. The National Bank of France did the same and came with this output. It means that for each million of euro that they, additional million of euro that they invest, a size of 16 football pitches will be impacted. Just keep in mind this figure, 16 football pitches. And also Boston Consulting Group did a big assessment of these dependencies and these impacts and found that 5 trillion per year of loss were due to the biodiversity loss. So these are not just minor figures. We can see that there are a growing concern of the financial sector on biodiversity. On the risk side, this is the first step, but after that, to transform these risks in opportunities. Also, on the regulatory side, the UN will finalize a new agreement, a new convention on biodiversity at the end of, at the beginning of December, which is called the Global Biodiversity Framework. And this framework has a dedicated target for the business. It means that, like for the Paris Agreement in 2015, from now, business will have the possibility to contribute to the national contributions to the International Convention on Biodiversity. And this is quite a game changer, or this is a breakthrough, because until now, companies were always asking, okay, but what will I do that could be promote, that could be see as a contribution to societal challenges and to the national or governmental commitments. Another breakthrough is that since also 2020, we have the possibility to assess impacts of every kind of company, including a financial institution, a bank, along its supply chain. It changed everything, because until now, all services companies were used to say, okay, we have just offices. So this is not a big part of the, I would say, total or global biodiversity impact. But now, if you include the energy suppliers of this kind of company, you will have a bigger impact. And I can just show here that you have two axes, in fact, to work on biodiversity, the one which is at the site level and the one which is at the supply chain level. And the tools that I will show afterward is exactly on this supply chain axis, which is absolutely more challenging for any kind of company because you will have to engage with the suppliers, surely. But we cannot say now that only some sectors are responsible or could work on this topic. Now, every kind of company can do its part of the job. So, before I go further on just some precise part about corporate biodiversity footprint, I'm very pleased to welcome also Fanny Bancourt. And I will give the microphone to the both just to let them present themselves. So let's start with the lady.
Sorry for later arrival, my train was delayed. Hello, I'm Fanny Bancourt. I'm a consultant in strategic biodiversity. I work with BL Evolution. We are a French consulting firm, and we are working with both corporate and financial institutions toward building footprints and then taking action, building strategies and action plans.
Yeah, so Fanny, you should breathe.
Lay down.
So good morning, I'm Gerard Bos. I used to be the former head of the Business and Biodiversity Program at IUCN, which was then renamed Enterprise and Investment because we saw the importance of looking after also the financial world. But I actually recently left IUCN and transitioned and actually joined another very exciting coalition, which is the Global Commons Alliance, who are hosting 5 very interesting components: the Earth Commission, Earth HQ, Science-Based Targets for Nature, SBTN, which many of you are probably very familiar with, the Accountability Accelerator, and the Systems Lab. And so I'm just continuing on that same journey on how do we bring the power of collaboration to really change the economic system so that it does integrate the global commons and integrates nature. What I feel we have the chance of is that we have here a session with not too many people. So I'm always very curious to know, who am I talking to? Who is actually in this room? So do you agree if we just go around a little bit? I know there are people online as well, but that we quickly go around in the room to actually understand on who is in the room, which organization are you representing. But I think the one very important information that I would like to capture from you is also, why did you choose this session? You know, there are 5 other sessions happening. What is it actually that attracted you here? Because that will help us when we get to the workshop mode, where we will be pulling up our sleeves a little bit and work together.
So is somebody disagreeing, or is it okay for everybody? It is. Excellent. So let's start with the first line. Please, come in. Just in a few words, your name, your role, and why you're here.
Michael Diaz from Superior Consultancy. I'm here because our clients, sooner or later after they discovered climate change, they will discover that biodiversity is a big issue. And I also think as regulators, sooner or later will say biodiversity has to be implemented in ESG research. And I would like to better understand how to do it.
Excellent choice. Thank you.
I'm Serge Billieux. I'm a data scientist with Soft Finance. We have a software to cross databases, and I believe that there is a lot of data to cross in biodiversity.
Absolutely, good point. Data is a big issue and also a challenge for corporate biodiversity footprint.
Hello.
Mr. Van Dam.
Yes, Mr. Van Dam. I work at BNP Paribas in the wealth management section, so in direct contact with wealthy clients and families. And obviously, it's very interesting. There's a lot of education needed in this field. Very interesting. It has to start with understanding what the impacts and dependencies are in portfolios. So yeah,
Excellent.
Very happy to be here.
Thank you. Another keyword, raising awareness. That's the first step also.
Hello, Alisa Gessler. I'm from the Center for Finance and Development here in Geneva, and I work a lot on global health and finance. And I think it's super important to go to biodiversity besides just climate talks. And I think this format of a workshop style discourse maybe might benefit more than just speeches.
Okay, thank you in advance for your contribution, as you wish.
Hi, I'm Olivier Ferrari, Coninco Explorers in Finance. We advise confront funds on one side, on the other side we engage for 15 years on the sustainable investment, but specifically we are beating against the ESG approach because we concentrate on the wrong way. Climate change also is one way very important for us, but planetary boundaries is the most point that we have to engage the finance. So I'm working on a DBA with the project how to integrate planetary boundaries, ODD ESG move to eco-circularity and to implement the drawdown project.
Excellent, that's a good point. The planetary boundaries model on which we will come again back after. To you.
Hi, I'm Tuan Lam. I help climate tech startups to scale with fund corporate engagement. I've been focusing on net zero and sustainability, but I truly believe we need to go beyond, and there is a need for technology, reporting systems, database programs. So I'm very interested in the opportunities in the tech space.
Excellent, thank you. How to engage with the startup and how to make them taking that as an opportunity?
Good morning. My name is Philippe Gau. I'm a CFO of a small Swiss asset owner. And I'm here because I'm wondering if biodiversity is the next big thing. And I'm wondering how you can manage data and knowledge around this topic.
Good, thank you. Yes, there is a momentum around corporate biodiversity.
Hello, good morning everyone. I'm Arnaud Pétieux. I'm working from Unigestion, a small asset manager based in Geneva. We are really interested into ESG, especially on climate, but also we are investigating the field of biodiversity in order to do that direct investment in listed equities and also private companies. So I'm here to look for standards in order to align properly with the aim to invest with impact.
Thank you, impact, another keyword.
Hi everyone, my name is Jan Everhard. I work for Pictet and I'm in the ESG team. So we drive, at the group level, we drive all transversal projects. We've done a lot on climate. We're starting on biodiversity. I'm here because I'm curious. So curiosity brought me into this room because it sounds relatively applied, what you're about to talk to us about and present. So keen to learn how we might bring this back.
Excellent, thank you for your interest. Madame Isabelle.
Hello
Welcome.
everyone. I'm Isabelle Rogan, work for Banque Alternative Suisse. At Banque Alternative, we invest in a lot of impact funds already, but I think the biodiversity theme is very important, so I'm here to discover and for the curiosity of what you might offer. I'm a client advisor here in Geneva for wealthy clients.
Thank you a lot. What's the feasibility of what we will present to you? That's a good point. Yes, Reto.
My name is Reto Gerber. I'm working also for the Alternative Bank Schweiz, coming from Olten, from the Swiss-German part of Switzerland, and I'm together with Isabelle, and she say everything already.
Thank you.
Good morning, Laurent Krull. I'm working for Etoresa, ESG analyst and investment advisor. I'm here because I'm working on the supply chain of critical metals, and biodiversity is very critical in the upstream of this value chain. So I'm very curious also.
Excellent. It reminds me that a week ago I presented more or less the same topic on the watchmakers at the annual congress, and for sure gold mining or gold extraction was a key topic. The floor is yours.
Good morning. My name is Susanna Messelt and I'm from Sustainax, and we're doing ESG research for institutional investors. And I'm here to look into how to assess the biodiversity, since it's rather complex.
Good. How to shift from ESG to biodiversity. Good point.
Hi, everyone. My name is Adam Weiss. I work for an NGO, Client Earth, which is an NGO that uses the power of the law to make change for people on the planet. And we would like to see some of these approaches actually become part of law, legal requirements for financial institutions and other actors. So I'm here to learn more about where things are at to see how we can move towards a more legally binding framework.
Excellent. You will see afterward that in France they are quite advanced on this regulatory framework.
Good morning. My name is Mark Alding. I'm from Danske Bank. I'm head of corporate advisory and ESG in the Nordics, and I'm basically here to get smarter and to be inspired.
Thank you. Inspiration.
Good morning. I'm Karen Kimberger. I'm an oceanographer, an expert on jellyfish, and I'm a consultant as well for IUCN. And I'm just doing my baby step on blue economy, just starting to work as an impact advisor for ocean asset. Yesterday we had a panel on blue impact. And I'm here because biodiversity.
Good. Blue bond. That's a good thing also. Yes.
Good morning. My name is Simon Troxler. I'm with Elevate Limited. Our company is specialized in supply chain assessments, and we're doing a lot of strategic advisory as well in the ESG space. Double materiality is a common topic in my daily life, so impact assessments and biodiversity is of great interest, and I'm very curious to see what the panel brings.
Excellent. We have a very interesting mix, so I look forward to the inputs that you will provide. Is there any comments from your side, colleagues, about these presentations?
No, I think it's great because it's really helpful also to see on how we're going to group later on when we do the workshop. I see ESG analysts, I see client advisors, I see people really coming here for curiosity and inspiration. So hopefully this is a nice mix because it will actually demonstrate that biodiversity, we can make it very complex, but we can also make it quite simple. And actually making sure it talks to the hearts and the minds at the same time. So that's hopefully what we're gonna show with some of the tools and elements that are out there. And please also speak up if you have tools, if you have suggestions, if you have already used methods and methodologies that you think are really useful in this realm, then we want to hear about it because it's a learning journey for everybody. Thanks.
Thank you, Gerard. Just the last introductive point. I work actually or currently with Fanny, and I've been working with Gerard in the past, so that's the reasons they are both with us today. So just a short figure to show that biodiversity can be integrated in all the life of holding. At the acquisition, at the beginning, during the holding period, or at the exit, biodiversity is a central topic if you want to have, I would say, environmental impact through your investment. Why? To assess the footprint of your portfolio, because first, behind each kind of your companies that you invest in, there are some risks relating to the natural resource exploitation, the transformation, the processing processes, and so on. Second, now we have the possibility to quantify this relation, this connection between a company or an investment and biodiversity. And this is absolutely new and a game changer too. Third, after you have this quantity, these figures, you can set science-based targets. Behind the models that we will show to you, there are some scientific models, Globio, Exaiobase, and so on. So you can be attacked by third party, but you can show, okay, we are in a journey. We know that we are not the best at the beginning, but we want to improve our practices. And that's probably one of the key takeaway of the day. don't think at biodiversity as something ideal. It's just something quite easy to start on and then to develop within all a company, to mainstream in your company. Fourth, never forget that you have to look at your biodiversity footprint through the supply chain or through all the portfolio. You are not alone. So there are also some resources with your suppliers, with your partners, with probably within a lot of different stakeholders, of your stakeholders. And fifth, one of the tools that I will just present is based on an indicator that allows you to be aligned with the global biodiversity framework. So now you can show what's your contribution, what is your contribution to a global policy. And this is also very important because like for the climate, it's very important for you to show that you are not alone on your side in your bubble, but you work with all the different stakeholders like the regulators and the NGOs. The regulatory context is a lot supporting now mainstreaming biodiversity in your activities at the global level with the GBS, at the European EU level, with also two forthcoming very important regulation, the SFTR and the CSRD, and also at the national level with, for example, in France, from the next year, all financial institutions will have to report on their biodiversity footprint as of the 1st January. And also in Switzerland, the counter project of the parliament has changed Code des Obligations. And for some kind of companies, there will be a mandatory report on mineral extraction and also your environmental footprint. So at this time, it's not so focused on biodiversity, but we are coming on that. And reporting or regarding some discussion yesterday, for sure, there are a two sides movement that is needed. Something coming from with a mandatory requirement, but also something coming from voluntary engagement from the companies. And the both will join probably in a few years in Switzerland too. When we talk about biodiversity footprint, what it is?
Olivier, can I just intervene just on the previous slide very briefly? But a lot of these things are still in the making, which makes it very interesting because it's really still the moment now to influence that. So the global biodiversity framework is not set yet. There's a concept out there, it's being negotiated, and the first 15 days of December in Montreal will be extremely interesting because hopefully we will land on the global biodiversity framework and we will land on some targets, and even it might be indicating some metrics or indicators to be looked at. And not only to be looked at by business, but to looked at by regulators at the global level, at the regional and at the local level. So it's very interesting times, and that's where also there's a very strong campaign at the moment to also enthuse, I would say, the corporates to be present at this COP in Montreal, and also to be quite open and transparent and asking for additional regulations, which very often regulators don't expect. But the front runners all have come together, and it's the larger companies, but they all see that if the companies are asking for stronger regulations and for a mandatory disclosure of their impacts and dependencies on biodiversity, then we are creating this new level playing ground that works for all and will then really get us to a more rapid and accelerated change that we need to do. Because there is a sense of urgency that hopefully for the ones that have been here at this building bridges in the last 2 days have also been able to capture a little bit. So two messages is it's still in the making. don't wait to start because you can shape on how this is going to look like and how this is going to end in a certain sense as a reporting framework and a disclosure framework for the corporates and the banks. So it's very interesting times.
Excellent, thanks a lot, because you gave me the transition to the next slide. Absolutely, the question about the metric is critical. And you see here the 3 kind of biodiversity footprinting that you can apply to a portfolio. And the third, which is the more, I would say, the most accurate, which is the aggregated quantitative approach, is often relying on a MSA metric, the mean species abundance per squared kilometer. And this metric is on the way to be integrated, or probably will be integrated in the GBF, in the global agreement, which will be undersigned by Switzerland, by France, too, by 550 countries in average. So we see that the maturity of this topic is quite advanced. Probably the maturity in our community, in the finance community, is not the same as what it is in some sector like the agri-food or the energy sector. To come back on the first level, I would say, approach is the qualitative. I will precise afterward what it is. Then, to be more precise, you have the non-aggregated quantitative, and then at the end, the aggregated quantitative, which provides some very specific results on your footprint. In more detail, what does it mean? The qualitative is with, or we suggest to apply this first approach with the Encore tool, which is a web-based tool, absolutely free. You can go on it. It gives results at the sectoral level and allows to have some idea on the share of the impacts and dependencies through your portfolio looking to the sectors. Then the half aggregated, which is based on indicators that you have to pick up from the companies. So it's very dependent on the companies that you have in your portfolio. And we suggest to present this indicator through the 5 IPBES pressures. IPBES is like the IPCC, but for biodiversity. And they just set up 5 pressures on biodiversity, which are land use, climate change, overexploitation, pollution, and invasive species. And the third, which is for us the 5-star, the best one, relies on, at this time, 3 tools: the GBS-FI, Global Biodiversity for Financial Institution, the CBF and the BFFI. At the bottom, you have just the acronyms, the explanation, so you can take a picture of it. And these tools gives you a really precise idea on where are localized your impacts, on which part of the supply chains, and also with which kind of pressures. And with these 3 types of parameters, you can start an action plan, you can start to engage, you can start to report, and you can start to monitor your progress. Just an example of qualitative output figure, and I will give the floor to Fanny if you want to further on that.
Yeah. So this is an example from Crédit Agricole Assurance, French insurance company that work with Encore. What we did with them, because we work with them on that, is work on assessing the level of pressure on biodiversity and the level of dependencies on the ecosystem services. So these are the 2 axes. Sorry, the document is axes in French, but the first axis is the level of pressure on nature, and the second axis is the level of dependencies on ecosystem services. And what we did was we identify all the sectors from their investments. We assessed how much they would invest in each sectors, and then we would use Anchor to assess the level of pressures and dependencies. So this is some kind of easy approach to start identifying the most maybe material sectors within your portfolio, and identify, is it important because it relies on nature, because it has a lot of dependencies, thus a lot of physical risk, or is it something material because it has a lot of impacts on nature, and there may be some transition risks behind because of new regulations, because of new markets, and that kind of approach.
Is there any question at this point? We can do it more interactive if you want. Yes, come in. The microphone is coming. Wait on it, please.
I just have a very pragmatic question on these tools that you just presented. Is there any way, I mean, do you have to sign up? Is it expensive to get access? Are there different levels that you can have? What are the costs of using them?
So this one is based on Anchor. Anchor is absolutely free. So you can make your own request on Anchor and have your own results. Then, absolutely, there is an interpretation works that is undergone by or made by consultancy.
There is an interesting resource, which is the European Business and Biodiversity Platform. And there's actually a section which is dedicated to the finance community as well, where they have done the assessments of all the various tools, metrics that are available. And then they have a short description of each of them. So EU BNB platform, just look it up with Google. And then what's interesting is that it highlights also if there is restricted access or not, but it privileges all the ones that have open access and not for a fee. The other element it does, and Arcadis has helped a lot with that, was also to develop what we call navigation tools, which is one element that is on the biodiversity or the natural capital journey, is you enter into that journey with a different maturity level. And there's no point on going to the most sophisticated and complicated tool to start with, because then you'll be completely lost and you will have no arguments on how to convince your senior management or your clients or your suppliers to work with you. There is, a staged approach that needs to be taken on that natural capital journey. So to a certain extent, all these tools have been developed at different stages of maturity, and there's a kind of recommendations on which ones do you use to really start your journey, or which ones will you use to go deeper and further into analyzing what's happening out there. So that's what the navigation tool is helping with, and there is a EU Value Nature website as well that has actually developed a mountain infographic on the natural capital journey, and which helps you identifying barriers and opportunities at the different levels that you're going. And it's very visual. So the idea was also to make it visual rather than only very complex Excel spreadsheets and tables to look at, because once you then dig a little bit deeper into it, it's a lot of data, it's a lot of information that you're being provided.
Maybe just to mention another resource for you, the Finance for Biodiversity Pledge has done a booklet with all the tools and description that may be easier to navigate than the navigation wheel. So you can also check that out.
The very last slide propose some resources links. So don't forget to take your picture of it at the moment.
Yeah.
So how would how would be an output of an aggregated quantitative approach? This is, for example, one which links the sector and also your scope of the supply chain. So in the biodiversity, the scopes are exactly the same as those for the climate from the GHG protocol. So here you have an example of the application of one tool. It was the CEBF, for BNP Paribas. And surely Fanny has some additional things to say.
Maybe even the person from BNP has some things to comment. But yeah, this was just to show you one of the outcome. Not many companies already report, or financial institutions already report on footprint. It's more exploratory work at this point. But as Olivier said in introduction, it's now mandatory for a lot of financial institutions in France to provide this type of footprint. So they have started to show some concrete work, and this is one, I think, of the most interesting visualization of a footprint that is at the moment, because a lot of asset owner or asset manager at the moment only show their impact per pressures, but you don't do really anything when you know that maybe 40% of your footprint is from land use. What do you do then? So this is really interesting, because then you can know that you have to focus first work maybe on consumer staples, and we work mostly on their scope 3 and upstream. And this not only provides you with a better understanding of how you depend on and how you impact biodiversity, but also on what you can do and which type of dialogue you have to start with the companies and corporates in your portfolio. Do you want to add something from BNP? No? Yeah.
Not really. I'm working on the wealth management side, so wealth management needs to integrate much more of this in their portfolio analysis and in communicating to clients. So I hope, this will just be more replicated in the future.
Good commitment. Just the cross of the scopes, the type of sectors, and the places built for you the hotspots. We call them your supply chain hotspot. Like you can have biodiversity hotspots that are localized, that are specialized, you can have them along your supply chain. There was another comment. Yes, please.
Yeah, just a small question. When you look at scope 3, do you look at all categories? Because if I take emissions, for example, financed emissions is the absolute bulk when you talk about a financial institution. So do you also have financed pressures?
Yes and no. It's still early stages. You have to imagine that biodiversity footprinting is what carbon footprint was 15 years ago about this. So what can be assessed is more macro level data. What they did with the tools was to take a photography of the state of nature right now and to try to attribute the loss to sectors. And this is the first input from those tools, is which sector contributed the most to biodiversity loss in the last 50 years. And this is like the first inputs in this. And then you can go deeper and deeper and saying, I use this material and this has this impacts, but we are still early stages. And for finance, what is recommended is to be able to separate sectors. What is not possible, or what hasn't really been done at this time, is to work with, I don't have the English word, fonds souverains, sovereign funds, and all those kind of very financial and difficult to relate sector financial elements. And this is often out of scope of these first footprints. It's they usually can cover 20 to 50% of their investment at this point, because they are easy to relate to sectors, but everything that is hard to relate to sectors is for now excluded of the scope.
But one interesting element is the same model is also being used by central banks and at country level. So the Netherlands was one of the first countries that actually did a full exercise to actually understand what is their biodiversity footprint as a country. How much biodiversity am I impacting through my imports or through my exports? Switzerland should be doing that exercise as well, and it would be quite interesting, especially when you're trading hubs for certain commodities or for certain products. But this really led then for the Central Bank of the Netherlands then to really realize, yes, biodiversity is a critical risk, and this is how then we can analyze it and then go back to the key sectors. And that is how then regulation can be driven as well on what type of products do we allow then to come into the country or not to come into the country. And that's, again, a feed then into the EU taxonomy and some of the other standards that are happening out there. So what is interesting is that still understand there is a plethora of a lot of different tools and methodologies because we're still in that innovation phase and where each organization wants to bring their own ideas and suggestions. And even yesterday there were a few other products that were presented. But there is a convergence. There are several projects, and this is spearheaded more at the European level through an aligned project and a transparent project where we're trying to get to a convergence of these reporting frameworks so that it doesn't become too much of a jungle. We're not there yet, but convergence are emerging, which is a good news. So hopefully we'll get to some standards, but we're not fully there yet.
Thank you for your input. So, from our side, we gave you everything we could, can I say? We would be very happy to listen to you, to know how is it feasible in you or in a company, in a financial institution, what could be the barriers and what would be the opportunities. For that, we suggest you to gather in, I would say, 3 groups, working groups, as you wish, and then to select one rapporteur, one person that will afterward, after 20 minutes of working groups, of collective work, will come to stick the post-it on which you will just drive some keywords on the pinboard there. And then we will engage with you in a discussion, absolutely open, with our 3 on what to do with your result, with your thoughts, with your input. Because for us, it's absolutely critical to understand what are the main things to look at when we implement such tools. Because, okay, this is quite clear, this is technical, but we all know that the key point is the human, are your colleagues, are your stakeholders. And for that, we need to collaborate. The conservation community, the consultancy community, the companies, and also the NGOs. We don't see from our side as just a direct work between some experts and some clients. Sustainability has also a transformative journey, which means that the best projects are those which are implemented in a large groups with, I would say, the biggest exchanges, and that provides the unexpected results. So, yes, Olivier Ferrari?
Just one thing. Thank you for today. I've made 6 conferences this year around Switzerland about the global subject, planetary boundaries. We are speaking about sustainability investment. We are speaking at dedicated strategy, could be on bio-footprint or others. But at the end, for the groups, at the end, 2 words. How much it costs and what is the profit for my client? That's the problem. This year, all sustainable investments are under observation because we have kind of strategy. The market is -15 and we are -25, because we have kind of exclusion and everything else like that. And now we have all the newspaper, all the bank are coming here, and all the client, final client, the investor, they're coming by us. Sorry, I'm linked to the pension fund. They say, sorry, I have to preserve liabilities, and I've lost with your strategy today so much, and that's a great problem, a big problem. You know, that's the real problem. Profit. I was in front of 50 CEO 1 week ago, and at the end, profit, my guys.
That's a good point. That would be some barriers, but also an opportunity. How to make, with this kind of thoughts, opportunities, or I would say business opportunities. And for that, we need also to discuss and your solutions. Thank you. Can we do the group, one of this side, another one central there, and another one there? And I will ask each of you just to gather around some seats, because we haven't any tables, or if you want, you can move the chairs. No worry about that. And start this with 20 minutes. We will come and feed your discussion, each of us. And in 20 minutes, I will ask one of you to come on the pinboard. Thank you a lot.
So unfortunately for the people online, we really have a hands-on session right now, and we'll be back in 20 minutes. Thanks.
But you're right. The state rules is very important. It is a barrier because we don't have enough rules for strong rules. But we can, we are. That's something we can share if you want. I'm seeing that for
Please resume your discussion. Keep the best of your thoughts for the after workshop time, for the after work debates. And I ask the three rapporteurs to come, please. Hi, Kali. To give us the best of your debate, please. So which group does want to start? Juan, ciao, that's it. Let me give you a microphone. So thanks a lot.
All right. Okay, so we looked at how to scale up. So we look at barriers and opportunities to address those barriers. We've had a lot of hot discussion.
Hot words, topics.
On what does prevent, or what are the barriers for biodiversity reporting and adoption for financial institution? It's okay. Well, first of all, there's still a lot of greenwashing. So there are reports in place, or companies and banks have to disclose, but it's still manual. Still, disclosure is still not yet mainstream in the value chain. It's still not true. And why that? There are still pressure and stress between the profit, short-term, mid-term, long-term, and biodiversity value and impact. It applies to sustainability, to ESG, to everything, but even more to something which is very young compared to other ESG drivers. And technically, or more operationally, other barriers. There are many standards, many reporting methods, very early stage tools, and also the data is not material and meaningful enough. So you mentioned that only you could do the report on 20% of the portfolio. Well, that gives an indication, but it's way not enough to assess the impact. And also, it's still heavily a manual process to do the reporting.
Excellent. Can you report on the opportunities on the pin board?
Over there?
As you wish.
Or the same? Number one, break the greenwashing with much more regulatory pressure and control. So that to the data, also more data integration, automated reporting, and also the big thing, also shift conversation of financial institution from financial performance to impact and financial performance. Well, that's still okay. How do we do it now? So, yeah.
Storytelling. That was also a key word.
Storytelling. Exactly. Yeah. So the next workshop is about storytelling to clients. No?
I don't know. I hope so.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks a lot for the work and the report.
Thank you. We start with the green card.
The green are for the opportunities, if it's possible.
Yeah, always start positive.
Okay, that's good.
First, we're talking about transparency. How the client get more transparency about his investments, or transparency generally. We want to measure impact, same like the other group, but we also discuss about simplifying the a kind of reporting of impact in a non-financial and a financial return. Maybe this is possible. So then we come to the financial, to the non-financial return. This will be a bit complicated to put on one paper or in a management summary. Then no financial return means higher impact, question mark. Next. And we're talking about impact forecast. Is it possible to make a forecast about impact data? And it's very complicated. Data who can share. Was so im heißt? It's not for free. Data. Aha. That's not for free.
Especially if it is scientific data.
Okay, the question of the access to the data.
Yes.
That's a key point. Exactly. Excellent.
Yeah, we talk also about the terms because we are optimists and we have a hope, but the terms for how long? As a client, we can make sure the client, if there is a return, a financial return for the next 2 years, the next 5 years, the next 10 years. And the risk, of course. If we are exposed to the risk or super exposed to the risk. And this is the performance of the banks, of course.
So our group is a bit better because the first group has only red ones. You
no,
see,
no.
We have only...
You made it wrong. Thanks you, Herr Gerber.
Okay, let's put the red. One red we have, one red. Yes.
So this is a barrier.
Yeah, sure. Of course, so we spoke also a bit, but it has been taken also on the yellow side, but also regarding to forecasting data on biodiversity. We see that there is a bit of a challenge here in order to indeed forecast what's going to happen, and to have that at the corporate level, it's even more complex, I would say. Also, we were discussing about the potential blind spots that we have in our portfolio, and that it's always good to have some first data in order to avoid the black swan events or the big blind spots, and also to refine them is a challenge. And of course, coming on this data topic again, I think regulation and other institutions are trying to race in order to have the best methodology available, and sometimes it creates also a bit of different moving parts that are a challenge to assess. Thank you.
Excellent. So now it's time to get some clarification, or
last group.
Excuse me, Fanny.
I will do for the last group because we had a lot of discussion, and I just wrote what they said on the paper. Just to go with the blind spot, we talk about this one, the lack of data upstream. That is clear, and that we discussed real lack of data today, especially upstream. And we talk also about downstream impacts responsibility, because we see that these tools can provide downstream information. So what responsibility for these downstream impacts? And this may be a challenge. And last challenge was the fact that SMEs may not be able to access this kind of aggregation tools because of no resources or just no access. On the opportunities, it was mentioned to maybe use this single metric to put a price on it, and that it could mean something and start moving stuff on the financial side. we didn't discuss too much on that. Also provide maybe these tools can provide a better understanding of nature impacts and impacts on nature to be able to guide action. So seeing the footprint as a guide to know what to do. And understand and anticipate risks, but risks in a business way to be able to find financial risks and be able to anticipate them in a matter of assessing risk for a portfolio. And we had the question that is not a risk nor an opportunity. Thank you. Who can help? And we talk about governments with regulation and companies that I say maybe who should help. That's also companies would need to be in this journey for it to move forward. Thank you.
Excellent. So we did a plan to finish at 30. 5 minutes remain to us. I propose that I keep up just 1 or 2 questions. Otherwise, I think that there is a lot on these post-its. For sure, on the data access, on how to mainstream it in a company, how to raise awareness, how to report, how to scale that with other kind of, or the size of companies. But I would say that from our experience, the first thing is first to know who are your key persons inside. You have to work on this in this journey, not alone. So it's very difficult to start such a project as I don't know, a sustainability manager or asset manager, which with only your engagement or personal conviction. So look after some support inside, and then that was also reported now. Gather some support outside. I would say with NGO or with some consultancy, whatever it is, but don't work alone. And for sure, the landscape of the data is evolving at absolutely incredible pace. So I think that in 1 year, we will speak absolutely differently from the topic of the data. But now it is in this condition. And so it is. Is there any question that I can pick or address? Yes?
This is not just biodiversity, but generally there's so many different associations and so many stakeholders that are refining this, and it's great. But obviously it's easy to get lost in the amount of good thinking that's out there. So you've all been close to it. If we had to focus on one upcoming thing, what should we focus on? Is it the conference or whatever it is in December?
No, I would say focus on the work on from the Finance for Biodiversity Pledge, because they release very useful documents, tools, and they have also very interesting discussion groups. And from there, you will have a lot of resources, in fact. That would be my topic. But probably Fanny has also interesting additions, adds to that.
I would say yes, follow the COP, but in December, but it will not be addressed to financial institutions. So more importantly, maybe follow what Finance for Biodiversity will say about the COP. It will be easier to follow. And follow also the work of the TNFD. The real work of the TNFD is to be able for everybody to have the same language. So they do a real work to build this language and to build the tools and to be able to report, and it's really made for financial institutions. So yeah, I would say TNFD and Finance for Biodiversity.
Or just contact us if you want. Yes, Gerard.
Yes. So from my perspective, and trying to summarize a little bit what we saw on the charts and from the discussions, I mean, clearly there's still the tension with making profit and so between financial and non-financial. But the move to impact management is there. I'm on the biodiversity advisory group of the GRI, and we are really moving to a global reporting initiative on biodiversity that will be focused on impact. CDP is doing the same with the Carbon Disclosure Project. So they are really integrating now biodiversity alongside climate. And there's a lot to learn from what has been done on climate. I do agree that the data is still the big elephant in the room. And it's the changing. But that again is you are great processors of data and data consumers, and so it's actually, you know, join these coalitions that are thinking about that, and to a certain extent the task force on nature-related risk and financial disclosure will help with that. Transparency is a very important point, and that's where the COP15 comes in and is very important, because large corporates are calling for a mandatory disclosure on their impacts and dependencies. So once the large corporates are starting to do it, that will force their suppliers and to a certain extent also the smaller and medium enterprises then to also report on that. And that's then all data that will be fed in the system, which allows you then to do your analysis. But one element that I'm missing, and I haven't heard much about, it did come up once or twice only in discussions, is how can you get also action on the ground going? So how can you contribute to actually invest in projects, support development of activities, the changes in the systems that will actually be positive with regard to nature and biodiversity? So I'm inviting you to join at the cocktail this evening, an Innovate for Nature organized cocktail. And the idea is actually we want to bring the financial community together with project developers that have nature-based solutions, but are looking then for the matchmaking with financial institutions and people that want to invest in nature-positive activities. Because that's where we need to go to a certain extent. It's action on the ground and changing the system so that we go into a system that actually regenerates biodiversity instead of destroying it, which is what's happening today.
Excellent end word from Gerard. For sure, keep an eye and keep your mind on the impact on the field. So I thank you a lot for your attendance, for your inputs, for your attention. I hope that the rest of the day will also achieve or meet your expectations. And now we are going in a 30 minutes break, and then the next session starts again at 11. So have a good day, and also have a good way in your biodiversity journey.
Take the opportunity quickly to have you free. May I have you free?